Hi everyone, it's your favourite Atomic Blonde here. How you all doing? It's great to see you. Sorry I didn't get to put any videos out last week over Easter. I had every intention of doing so, but then, stuff happens. Mainly, as you can hear, my hay fever has kicked in with vengeance, and I've had really bad sinus headaches and things, and I couldn't get to cinema to go see Immaculate. I just really was not up to recording, so I've just been looking after myself last week, which brings me on to the good news. That meant that this weekend I've been able to go see Immaculate and the first Omen. So Hollywood being Hollywood does that thing that they do every now and again. We seem to get two identical films coming out. Way back then, remember, we got like two volcano films, two meteor Armageddon crashing into the planet films. We got two insect without Bug's Life and whatever the other one were, ants. Every now and again we seem to get identical films coming out, and we have it here. We literally, in the space of like 2 weeks, we had Immaculate come out. I think it was 22nd of March, and then the 5th of April we've had the first Omen. So what did I think? Now I have to sort of say, I love these sort of type of films. I'm into horror films anyway. I don't cover a lot of horror on the channel. I probably should, because obviously they absolutely feed into pop culture. Going right back to like Dracula and Frankenstein up to The Exorcist. All these things bleed into pop culture. And like, if you sort of say to, I think even younger kids, people in their 20s or something, if you reference Damien, they'd probably know who you're talking about, even if they haven't seen The Omen. If you sort of say, like, it's a kid running around a restaurant, he's banging into your chair, somebody like, oh, bloody hell, somebody sit Damien down. They know what you're talking about, right? So it's absolutely part of our culture these days. I mean, certainly the Omen is up there, in terms of, I think you'd be very hard pressed to find a horror fan where The Omen is not in their top 10 list somewhere. And depending on the type of style of horror you like, it's going to be right top of the list or somewhere down the bottom of the list, depending on, say, whether you're more into gore or psychological, supernatural, etc., etc. Now, as I said a few weeks ago, when I was sort of teeing these up to say, wow, we're getting two identical films, I said then, obviously, I am a huge fan of the Omen trilogy. I've seen the 3 films, I've read the 5 books, and the Omen 4 and 5 books are sequels to the Omen 3 film, but weren't made. They've done a really bad made-for-TV kind of soft reboot where they made, you had Delia, who was kind of the offspring of Damien, but she then had her twin inside her, which they then took out and then put in the mother. And then that was actually kind of the Antichrist, not the, but anyway, Then we got the absolutely shot-for-shot, pointless remake in 2006. If you're not going to bring anything new, why bother? Which then sort of leads us on to the first Omen. So whenever someone says they're doing a prequel or a sequel or a reboot or whatever, you can't help but roll your eyes and just be like, why? Like, the Omen is such pinnacle of, Richard Donner at his absolute best. Basically, Richard Donner got offered to make Superman on the success of this film and how well it did, which these days is a bit, you probably go, huh? He'd done this horror film, they gave him this wholesome family thing to do. But anyway, he was offered Superman on the back of the Omen. So I have very high expectations for this. So anyway, let's kind of wind back and get, I guess, a little bit. So this is what I put up the other week, and I've kept the Omen in there because it will be relevant. As you see here, spoilers. I'm going to have to talk about some spoilers to explain to you why I kind of like these films, or the pros and cons of these films. It's very hard to sort of explain, I think, the cons, certainly around the first Omen without getting into spoilers. So if you haven't seen these films yet, what I'm trying to do about, okay, I'll do a summary and then I'll go into spoilers. Okay. So I saw Immaculate on Saturday. And as I said, when I was covering this, I was sort of sitting there watching, I'd gone to see June 2, and this trailer come on, and I was like, oh, is it the new trailer for the Omen, the first Omen? And at the end of it, Immaculate came up. I was like, oh, okay, got a completely different film. So both films, you have a nun who's flown over from America. So she's a little bit fish out of water. In Immaculate, she's gone to a new convent, and she's trying to find her feet in, sort of being the new girl, in a foreign country, not necessarily proficient in the language, and trying to figure out where her place is, and becoming a nun or being a novice nun, all those kind of things. You've got exactly the same in the first Omen. You've got this young girl. She's come over from America. This time she's going to an orphanage. And again, very much fish out of water. She doesn't speak the language. The kids are teaching the language, obviously telling her to say one thing and it means another, and all of that kind of thing. So the first kind of hour of both these films are very, very similar. Even the pacing, it's almost like beat for beat, very, very similar. And then gradually you start to see these weird things happening. Obviously in Immaculate, she discovers that she's pregnant, and by all accounts, it looks like Immaculate Conception, because obviously she's a nun. And she's like, well, I've definitely not been with anybody, so and I've been at the convent, so this happened since I've been here, kind of thing. And she's very much put on this pedestal, and she's looked after, and the priests now are basically like teeing her up to be the next Virgin Mary, effectively. But as the pregnancy goes on, obviously there's like strange things happening, and she gradually manages to find out how she got pregnant and why. And then it culminates. The film really does kick in the second half. When she kind of like realizes what's going on and she tries to escape, it goes a bit bonkers, and the ending is what we say is you've basically got two films with two nuns. I'm trying not to give spoilers here. So yeah, they end very differently. That's all I'll say at this point. They end very differently. But Sydney Sweeney's great in it. You've got the actor who played the professor in one of my favorite TV shows, Money Heist. He's a Spanish actor. Let me find his name. Money Heist. And you've seen he's been in a few other bits and pieces. Alvaro Morte. I'm sure I pronounced that really bad, but yeah, he's been in a few like Hollywood bits and pieces. There's a really good not supernatural, time travel-y type Spanish film on Netflix that he's in. Very good actor. Love him in Money Heist. He's playing like a priest, or I think he's just a priest, not like a cardinal. So I'm just sort of thinking through. His role, does it say what he is? Father. Yeah, he's just a father. But this father was a scientist before, or geneticist before, which will give you a clue about what's going on here. Yeah, before he goes into the church, and he's kind of looking after her while she's pregnant, etc. So yeah, I think both films have, say, good cast, strong performance, how the respective characters handle what's going on, very, very different. And both end up obviously in a very dark place. Now, I think obviously Immaculate kind of allows you to kind of make up your own mind what she's given birth to. They don't come out and say it. And And obviously the first Omen is a prequel. You know exactly where that's going to end up because it's a prequel. So the first Omen is a very strong. It's not very strong. I'd say it's a good horror film. It's solid. It's fine. I've seen people absolutely raving about it. I can't work out why. I think the problem is that everybody's expectations were so low going into this being a prequel that everybody's been like really pleasantly surprised how much of a solid film it is. And I absolutely agree with that. It is a good horror film. I think kind of what lets it down is actually that it's a prequel. And I'll come on to that. But again, so you see this very innocent trainee nun fly over. You find out that she's been an orphan. She's been an orphan. She is an orphan still, but she's been like she's basically been a ward of the church her whole life. So when she gets to Rome, a cardinal is there to greet her and a driver, and so she's basically gone to Rome to take her final vows, and because she's a novice, I think, or, in training nun. But she's gone there to take her final vows and become a fully fledged nun. It's like she's always been under this cardinal's wing, and so she goes to this orphanage where they obviously look after orphan girls, and you get basically unmarried mothers going there to have the baby. This is set in 1971. Obviously the Omen was 76, but obviously when Damien's born, it's 71, and then the film kicks in 5 years later when Damien's 5 in 76. Now, what I will say is this film has done a great job of recreating like 70s Rome, also in the 1970s, and how films looked and felt in the 70s. So if you're sort of looking at how it was shot versus how the Omen is shot, you really kind of get that feel that it could have been made in the 70s, but without being dated. They've just done a really good, I don't know if they filmed it on film rather than digital. I'm not sure, but that might be how they've got the look. But they've done a great job of recreating the turmoil that was going on in the 70s, especially there was all like these demonstrations and political demonstrations happening at the time, and people were very much on the, I think like the world over, kind of on the back of Vietnam War. There was a lot of, the unrest and people not trusting governments, and people were sort of turning away from the church. And they sort of recreate this like really well, this sort of really unsettled nature of what was happening in Rome at the time. So from that sort of world building perspective, it's done a really, really good job. Great performance from Nell Tiger-Free, who plays the lead nun in this, Margaret. And as I said previously, she was previously in The Servant, which show on Apple. And again, she plays, again, in that, you're like, they set her up like, again, is she the Antichrist, or isn't she? Or is she just insane? Is she just part of a religious cult? We don't know. And they don't really answer it in the show. It's kind of left for you to decide, but it's an M. Night Shyamalan, worth a watch. It's a bit weird. And to a degree, she's a little bit that character in this, in terms of like, she does batshit crazy really well, really well. That whole kind of, what's real, what's not, is it in her head, is it not in her head? She gave a really good performance in that sense. So kudos to her. You've got Charles Dance in a very small role at the start. And then, let me just pull up his name. British actor who's been in loads of stuff throughout the years. He was in an episode of like The British Office where he played David Brent's best friend Finchy. He's just been in loads of stuff over the years here in the UK. Let me just think of his name. Oh, sorry, filming, it's what happens when you film straight after work. Your brain's just checked out for the day. Ralph Ineson, Ineson, as Father Brennan. Now, Father Brennan is obviously an important character in The Omen, played by Patrick Troughton. Now, I will say, like, Ralph Ineson done a really good job of not trying to do an impression of Patrick Troughton. He kind of took the elements of the role. And I think say made it his own, but I think it was a very, very good bit of casting. Well done on his part. I think the accent, the Irish accent, is much stronger, but I think overall done a very, very sound job, because like stepping into Patrick Troughton's shoes is a pretty big job. So well done on that one. Obviously, we've got Bill Nighy in there. Again, very famous British actor who I love. He does so well. He flips between like comedy and horror, drama so easily. Absolutely great back catalogue of stuff. Very, very dry. I mean, most people would probably know him from Love Actually, I think, maybe in the States, but yeah, again, you know, great actor, and he's playing the cardinal that took Margaretta under his wing and is looked out for. He's almost like sort of father figure to her, and yeah, so she gets the orphanage. She finds this young girl who is kind of always segregated from the other children. She's locked in a room a lot. And when she kind of like tries to find out, or when she first meets her, the kid acts really weird and like licks her face, and it's all just a bit, ugh, you know. But they kind of explain that she's, you know, she's bad, and she has behavioural issues, and she's often locked in the room because she's bit one of the nuns or she's hurt one of the other children. And Margaret, and what we then find out is that Margaret also had problems when she was a child, and again, because she grew up in orphanage, you know, she's always got nuns locking her in rooms or tying her up or beating her, or you know, whatever nuns do. But she kind of identifies with this girl because, again, like it's got to allude, she had these mental health issues and she used to see things, and the cardinal, and that all kind of went away when the cardinal come along and he taught her to realize it's in her head and it's not real and all of this. So she has this immediate kind of relationship with this girl and tells her that, you know, she's not bad, and you know, we're very, very similar. And then as this goes on, she's then approached by Father Brennan, and he says that this girl, he needs more information about this girl, but potentially she's the result of something dodgy going on at the orphanage, and she's being teed up to be the mother of the Antichrist. Things then obviously, like over the course of the film, kind of spiral out of control a bit. What I will say with both these films, they're both very slow burn. I sort of checked my watch at the Omen, we're like an hour in, and I was like, it's better pick up soon. And it does. They both do. What the second half of the films, they really ramp up, like, you know, and do go really well, fairly to the end. But these are really slow burn films, so, which is not normally my sort of thing. But there is a payoff to both films, so it kind of works. I think Immaculate done a better job of kind of building tension, and there's something quite, you know, onerous going on. First Omen, there's a couple of jump scares in there. There's one that's really quite like, ew. But I wouldn't say it's scary. I wouldn't say it's terrifying. And for me, there really wasn't any tension. This sort of big reveal is so obvious. I mean, it's obvious from the moment she arrives in. It's just so obvious that you're like, oh no shit, Sherlock, couldn't see this coming. So that's like very disappointing as well. I think the way they explained the pregnancy in Immaculate was very good, and what this all means. So, okay, I'm going to move on to spoilers now. So, whoop, 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 whoop. Spoilers. So, if you want to know what the twists and the turns and how these films end, or don't want to know, I should say, you need to drop out now if you haven't watched these films. So, Immaculate, we find out that basically she's been artificially inseminated by the priest, by the father, as I said, was a geneticist before he came to the church. Now at the convent, they have a nail, which is supposedly from the crucifixion. And the priest has managed to get DNA off the nail and has been trying on numerous occasions to basically birth the second coming, the Messiah. But things haven't gone to plan. She basically finds all this out, and like I say, she tries to escape, and then she ends up killing the Mother Superior. He's a cow. She's not nice in this, I have to say. Very stereotypical. And he's obviously trying to say, look, and there's a whole thing, like, so they put her on a pedestal. They are literally setting her up to be the Virgin Mary, the Virgin Cecilia. I think it's Cecilia. What's her name? Oh, these films are so similar in my brain. I can't. Sorry, I'm getting her name wrong. Oh my gosh! And then I think Cecilia was the girl out of the first Omen. Honestly, these films are so alike. And watching them a day apart, it's a little bit. So I do apologise. Very unprofessional of me. Oh no, she's Cecilia. She's Cecilia. Okay, was right. Okay. Anyway, so he's like in awe. He's like sort of saying, "I'm doing God's work." And obviously she's like not happy that she was obviously impregnated through artificial insemination, but it's still a violation of your body. She didn't get a say in this. So she's like, don't give me it. That's God's work bullshit, basically. She sets fire to the lab. He's like, you think he's like burnt to death because his inferno happens. We kind of get the jump scare that he's not dead, and then she does kill him. And then she sort of gets away, and all the time she's sort of running away. I think, she's in labor, her waters are breaking, and it's it's all pretty like, whoa, full on. And then she has the baby. She bites through the umbilical cord. And then, but this is very much is left up to the audience. So we've just been told that this is potentially, DNA from Jesus with her. And the baby's on the ground. You hear it making these sort of gurgling weird noises. You don't see the baby, but she just basically then picks up a rock and smashes it into the kid. So, but you see this look of horror on her face. So I think it's kind of implied, and through what they say about the previous experiments or previous trying to do this, that the kid's deformed in some way. So, but anyway, so the whole kind of thing is like, is it just a normal? Is it just a baby that's deformed and she kills it? Is it the second coming and it's deformed and she kills it? Or is it effectively because this thing has tried to be forced into the world and it's not God's work, it's actually like the Antichrist or a demon or something? We don't know, but it's left up to you to decide that is this woman just so traumatized that she's just killed this baby regardless, or is this thing evil? We don't know. And that's pretty much how the film ends. That the rock comes down. I mean, you don't see anything obviously, but they just face to black. Job done. Woman scarred for life. So overall, I quite liked it that it had its sort of, its own kind of ending. It's something original. So it is very slow at the beginning, real slow burn. Performances are good. I did enjoy it. Again, it's better than I thought it was going to be. And it's come up with its own kind of ending. And I do quite like endings where it's kind of left up to you to decide, what the outcome was. This is almost a bit of a sort of Frankenstein's monster kind of thing. And there's lots of debates around science and faith, and if science and faith come together, I mean, what's the moral ground on that? I don't know, and it's not the channel to get into it, I'm sure. But if you've basically got someone of faith with this scientific knowledge trying to force something into the world that's not God's will, it appears, obviously, even though they think You know, I think both films really touch on the whole religion kind of. I think at the moment, you know, when you look at cults and religion and ideology, this unwavering, unshakable belief that you're right is so prevalent in our society right now that it's, you know, the end always justifies the means. It doesn't matter how mean you are or if you cancel someone, or as long as you think you're in the right, you're in the right. So both of these films kind of touch on that a lot, about this sort of unwavering, almost fanatical belief in something, that the end justifies the means, and that, and the thing you know, you're completely selling out or undermining the thing that you believe in, like basically being cruel and evil and mean and sadistic and, you know, violating someone. But as long as it's in these films, you know, as long as it's God's work, that's fine. So they're both very touching on that. Very interesting. I mean, obviously the world's been a, well, we've been in the clown world for a long time, but it's really kind of, you know, the power of belief in something is very, very you know, in a twisty way, it's very, very dangerous. So Immaculate, I enjoyed. Original film. Well, I say original film, it's just so bonkers how similar these films are, and the fact they both came to fruition at the same time, and whoever chose to release them 2 weeks apart is like, I don't know. So it's a bit difficult because one sort of clouds the other. I will rewatch both of these again when they come out on streaming. It might change my view, I don't know, but overall I enjoyed it. I would say I would recommend, if you're into your horror, certainly if you're into your sort of like religious horror, like the original Omen or Rosemary's Baby, things like that, you will enjoy Immaculate. Okay, the first Omen. Now, I've made some notes on this one. It's an interesting one. It's a really interesting one. So, as I said, it's a solid horror film. The acting's good, the way it's shot's good, and like I said, I think coming from a real place of low expectations, this is a far better film than you're ever expecting it to be. It does have a solid story that runs all the way through. There is a conclusion to that story. It kind of ties up the loose ends. You understand the motivations behind the characters, a good character work. So from all that perspective, it's good. Again, it is slow. It's a slow burn, as I said. Like, first hour, it's like, but stick with it. You know, it does go somewhere. I think that the other cons is that it obviously is a prequel. That they've deliberately tried to web this into the Omen. And for me, this is kind of where the film ironically fails. For me, I think if they had made this as a standalone film, like Immaculate, and wanted to start their own kind of new franchise, Antichrist, religious, whatever you want to call it, franchise, this would have worked much better. And the ending would make sense, and they can take it in whatever direction they want to take it. The moment you web this into the Omen, the film changes, or the changes to canon they have made just don't make sense to then the original three. You know, there's a theme that runs all the way through Omen 1 to 3, and it's very integral to the story. And by them trying to shift this and make it a human story, just creates so many plot holes in the Omen that on its own, like I said, it's a 10 out of 10 film. Now you put so many plot holes in it, you'd be like, so, and you know, the Omen's an old film, you know, 76. So that's 50 years old, right? Or coming up for 50 years old. And in a couple of years' time. So it's 48 years old, whatever. It's an old film. So would a lot of modern audiences or young audience people, I mean, this is a 15. Would they have seen the Omen? Probably not. Or would they actually, because they've heard this is a prequel, would they have subsequently gone to watch the Omen before? Now, you can absolutely watch this without seeing the Omen. And I think if you hadn't seen the Omen, you'd probably enjoy it more, because you don't know where it's leading to. If you're an old fart like me, who has seen the Omen and loves the Omen, it's just too jarring for me. Now, like I say, I've seen people sing it, because I really was a bit like, I think this is going to be shit. It's going to suck balls big time. Wasn't really interested in seeing it, but I did say, look, I'm going to go watch 2, compare, blah, blah, blah. And it is a good film. It doesn't suck balls. This is the end. It's such a frustration. But this insistence to make it a prequel, rather, I think, just having the balls to have it as its own thing and create a new franchise that had nothing to do with the Omen. I mean, even there's lots of films out there, like I say, with Rosemary's Baby, and there's other ones in the 70s that talk about the Antichrist. You know, nobody's, it doesn't. If you're good, nobody's going to say, oh, that's a rip-off of the Omen. If you come up with new and original things, or you can sort of say, look, it's heavily inspired by the Omen, but we want you to do our own thing. And I think if they'd gone that route, this film would be so much better. The problem is, because literally at the end of the film, they are handing Damien over. Well, literally, you got Father Spoleto in a car taking Damien to hand him over to Richard Thorne. It literally, you could watch the end of this film, put on the Omen, and it would be seamless. You got Richard Thorne arriving at the hospital. Damien's just been brought in. Away you go. But so the big thing, which I talked about when a couple of weeks ago, I said, from what I've seen from the trailers and what I'm sort of hearing online, my biggest concern was them getting rid of this Damien is born of a jackal. And this is really important. And that's why I've still got the picture on here of the poster. You can see his shadow is a jackal, wolf-like, because it's really important to the story. So they've shifted the story that Damien's mother is a woman. And they've tried to address this whole born of a jackal. They haven't got rid of it completely. But so the whole premise is that the people are turning away from the church. They're not afraid of hell anymore, fire and brimstone. As I said, there's all this unrest in the 70s. So this fanatical part of the Catholic Church decide that, okay, through fear, we'll drive people back to the bosom of the church. And to do that, we'll create a real thing for them to be afraid of. So that somebody has this bright idea that will find a way to spawn the Antichrist, but will control the Antichrist. So he'll cause enough terror in the world, but we'll rein it back in when we need to. Insane. Absolutely insane. So to do this, they come up with and then again, this is a bit that's like, so they create this monster, and they kind of say it's this part man, part beast jackal, they call it. But somehow they've managed to genetically engineer or create, who the hell knows, but somehow the Catholic Church has managed to create this monster, jackal demon monster thing. They get a nun they get a volunteer who then has to effectively be mated with this creature, and they literally put a bag on her head, tie up the bag, tie her up, and let this thing go to town on her. The pregnancies are accelerated. They happen like really, really quickly, like over the span of like a few weeks or a few days even. It's hard to tell from this film how long it took to gestate, but it's not very long. Then if they get this beast thing to mate with its own offspring, you'll get an Antichrist. I have no idea. I was just like, okay, right. So this has nothing to do with Satan at all, or devil worship. And I do, don't get me wrong, I do like the aspect of this crazy sect in the Catholic Church coming up with this plan, but it's kind of, this is the 70s, right? So how on earth did they come up with it? How did they make this demon thing, or did they summon it from hell? I mean, we don't know, and they don't really explain that. They just kind of got, okay, we need to explain the jackal thing away somehow so we can have the human interest. And it's just this bit of sort of garbled, okay, the father's this beast thing. So I found that just a bit stupid. I mean, if you're going to go down that route, then explain it, right? Not just go, oh, right, we've ticked a box, we've referenced the jackal, that'll shut up all the people that like the Omen. No, it won't. So it then goes on. So we've got this young girl who's being teed up to be the mother of the Antichrist. Then we find out that this experiment has been going on for a while. There's at least 14 attempts to get this girl that can mate with her father effectively. And we think and it's the one girl in the convent. The big spoiler, non-spoiler, oh, the nun's one as well. I mean, you can see it coming a mile away. You knew the nun was going to be Damien's mother. It's just so obvious. There's one point where basically the pregnancy kind of takes hold. So she's pregnant, but she basically realizes, and they explain to her how she got pregnant and how she ended up mating with this thing and not remembering. They do explain it, and they explain it very well. But then she's in pain, and all of a sudden her stomach just grows, and she's vomiting, and she starts convulsing, and she's shaking, and I think, oh right, okay, is she going to turn into a jackal now, or something really bizarre is going to happen, that she's like demon-esque or something? No, it's just weird convulsing, and her belly gets big. Very strange. Yeah, so we basically find this out right towards the end of the film. Then she's basically taken by the church. And at this point, she's with Father Brennan and another priest, and they've figured this out, and who she is and who the other girl is, and this sect going on. Their car gets hit by another car, by the crazy lot of priests. They take her, cesarean, baby, and this is where it really goes off the rails for me. So we have Damien. Oh, but then he has a twin sister. Of course he does, because we can't make anything these days without a girl getting involved, right? So there's now a twin sister. So is she evil or is she angelic? We don't know. Guess we'll find out later. But again, they don't explain, right? So why? So obviously Damien had powers because he's the Antichrist. So they don't explain how just being born of this creature thing, because it doesn't appear to have anything satanic to do with it. How does Damien have powers later on? Don't know. Why is it only the boy that gets powers and not the girl? Don't know. Doesn't make any sense, because effectively you've got 3 of these girls running around now who just end up going mental because they get these visions, but they don't seem to have any powers. Very strange. You create a massive plot hole that Father Brennan in the Omen, shouts at Robert Thorne, I was at the birth, I saw its mother. He wasn't at the birth. He's still passed out in the car somewhere, left for dead. So he wasn't even there, even though he says he was in the film. So then all through the Omen, obviously you've got the army of people surrounding him and looking after him, starting with Mrs. Blaylock. So they bump off the Rottweiler turns up at Damien's birthday party and puts a suggestion to the nanny. The nanny, does it. It's all for you, chucks herself out the window, hangs herself so Mrs. Blaylock can come in. So who are these? So are these actually Satanists? And if they are Satanists, the Catholic Church tell Satanists that the Antichrist has been born so they know? Or are they actually members of this sect and they're actually Catholics who are looking after Damien? And then when Father Brennan was killed, and who killed him? Because the whole point is it kind of implies that it's Satan, but they're actually saying God killed him. It really doesn't make any sense. You know, it just kind of blows the plot line out. And I think the biggest thing that it does, what it really removes, is that obviously when Robert Thorne speaks to Bugenhagen and he gets told his son is the Antichrist, and he's like, well, I want proof. And he says he's got the mark and that will convince him. But all the way through it, he's like, he's not human. He's not human. He's not a human being. You know, he's born of a jackal. He's not human. He just appears to be human. And obviously, once Robert finds the mark and that confirms to him that he's not human, you know, the whole thing is, it's so important that he's not human that Robert could bring himself to kill a 5-year-old boy who he's basically loved as his son for the last 5 years, right? So it's so integral to the plot that Robert believes this child isn't human. By doing what they've done, he's part human, because his mother's human and his grandmother was human, albeit they're part this jackal beast thing, but he's now part human. So it completely just undermines, for me, the Omen. So I think this is actually closer. If you look at the story and the whole, how it's like, it's more closer to Rosemary's Baby to a degree. So it's like it's got portions of Rosemary's Baby, it's got portions of the Omen sort of spliced together that they then insisted on sort of webbing into the Omen. And I think if they just made this as a standalone thing, a brand new Antichrist franchise, it would have worked so much better. By trying, you know, or if you're going to web it into the Omen, then you need to keep the whole Damien's born of a jackal, because it just doesn't make sense otherwise. So for me, that's the rub, because it's a shame. It is a good film. It's a well-made film. The director, I think, it's her first time directing films. She's previously worked on TV shows like Channel Zero, which is great. You know, if I say you like your horror stuff, first season of Legion, and some other bits and pieces, the Netflix show. So, and I've seen her interviewed, and she knows her horror. You can tell she knows her horror. She very much like David Cronenberg fan, big fan of the Omen. So you can see the respect from that point of view, and how like they try to create the atmosphere and the look without ripping it off or being a parody almost. You know, she's done such a good job. I think they just should have had some conviction and just made it its own thing. So we then get like a final scene so basically everything's then caught on fire. And again, this doesn't quite make, so we know in the Omen, after Richard and Kathy leave with Damien, the hospital burns down. There's nothing left. That's where we see Father Spoleto later on, and he's all badly scarred and burned. So again, is that God punishing him? Is that the devil punishing him now? We don't know, because they fucked it up. So there's this massive fire. So basically they cut her open. They basically said the girl, so Margaret and Damien's twin sister, they can all just be left there to die. We've got what we need. Massive great fire, but this is where they are. Because they track. Because initially I thought, oh, are they under the hospital? And that's why that makes sense how the fire started. But then you see Spoleto in the car with one of the other nuns and Damien traveling to the hospital. So how does the fire? So now we have two fires, whatever. And the only time you really see this jackal thing is right at the end where it's on fire. And this thing's freaking huge. It's like man-sized. And again, in the Omen, when they open the grave, when they originally find Damien's mother, it's like dog-sized, you know, it's bones of a jackal. This thing is absolutely ginormous. It's like, well, if they buried that in the grave, wow, it's shrunk a lot. And if they didn't bury that in the grave, why would they even bother putting a dog in the grave or a jackal in the grave? Why wouldn't they just put the baby in the grave? Makes no sense. So so these things really bug me. Now, some people just go, oh, well, you know, fine. But this stuff really winds me up, especially when I really like a franchise. And something that's so cleverly written is now kind of been they've pulled the thread and it's just kind of unraveled. Anyway, so the crazy girl manages to rescue Margaret and the baby, and then we basically see them in the arse end of nowhere in the winter, living in a cabin. I think it's, I can't remember if it was 5 years later or looking at the Damien's sister's age. I think she was like 4 or 5. So whether it's just meant to be 5, that's when obviously the Omen starts. Father Brennan turns up just to warn her, to say, look, they know you survived. They know the girls are alive. They're going to be coming for you. Which kind of leaves it open to this a sequel, prequel running alongside the Omen. I don't know. But it's just that kind of eye rolling, and it's probably oversensitive. Because this film's not woke in any way, shape, or form, and nor is Immaculate, I will say that. But just at the end where they have a twin, and of course I'm like, oh, of course there has to be a girl, and well, she's going to be the key to everything. Well, I mean, I could be completely wrong. You know, we know Damien dies in Omen 3. Maybe she's another Antichrist, and she takes over from where he left off. Who knows? That would be a really good, you know, way to go to subvert our expectations. You know, having a woman who's bad. Wow. But I doubt that's probably what we'll get. Probably get she's some angelic thing who, you know, inadvertently manages to bring down. But if the story's like running in parallel to Omen, it's actually her behind it all who manages to take him down or something stupid like that. I don't know. Don't really care. So, yeah, is it a good film? Yes, it is, if you don't look at it as a prequel to The Omen. I think they just should have done their own thing. Then say they could have taken those 3 girls' story, taken it wherever they wanted to, and not worry about canon or what happened in the other films, or they'll just ignore the other 2 sequels and go off and do their own thing, which will annoy people even more. I don't know. But was it well made? Was it well acted? Yes, as I said, Nell Tiger Free, amazing performance. She does batshit so well. And if you don't really get hung up on canon and things like that, you'll probably enjoy it. Or if you can just watch it and just don't think that this has anything to do with the Omen, again, you can enjoy it. But for me, it was just so jarring at the end. I'm just like, oh my God, there's this whole list of things that don't make sense in the Omen anymore now. And if you're such a fan of the Omen, why would you? So I don't know if it was like studio notes or someone wrote it as a standalone thing and somebody said, hey, you know what, we could tie this into the Omen. I don't know. Again, you'll see from the trailers, there's a bit where one of the nuns kills herself, and it's complete homage, recreation of what happened in the Omen, just not very well. And again, you have kind of people dying, but there isn't like this kind of coincidentalness to it, or could be written off as an accident. You don't really have any of that you had in the Omen. You know, there's reasons why people die, and there's, you know, because obviously they're trying to protect Damien. People just sort of randomly die in this without really, apart from one character, and you kind of, yeah, you see why he gets kind of bumped off, but you know, a lot of it's just not there. Like I say, the tension building and the kind of building up and unraveling, because the whole thing about the Omen is that, you know, from the get-go, the whole premise is you find out with Robert who his son really is. You're kind of finding out as he finds out. And they tried to do this kind of big reveal thing that wasn't a reveal. It was just so freaking obvious. It was just like, oh, okay. Didn't see that coming. So for me, there was no real tension, and there's certain characters, because it's a prequel, we go, well, you know, they're not going to die, you know, they're going to be in it, and So yeah, it's frustrating, because this film could have been great. For me, it's good. It's fine. Way better than I expected it to be. Better than it should have been. So circling all the way back to say, which film did I prefer? So I'd say the first Omen is definitely a better made film, 100%. And cinematography, all of that, much better made film. But I personally preferred Immaculate just because it's an original story. And as I said, at the end, it leaves you to make up your own mind what was going on with that kid, and is she a good person or a bad person or whatever. So out of the 2, yeah, Immaculate, because for me, it's just a standalone original thing. I prefer it. But the first Omen is the better made film. and I wouldn't even say a better acted film. I think Sydney Sweeney and Nell on par. I would say they're both very, very strong performances, and both portray really well women who have been put in this situation that's outside of their control, right? They have been violated in ways, especially the first Omen, because she is violated, by this beast thing. I mean, don't worry, you don't see any bestiality or anything like that, but you know what is going on. With Immaculate, I say at least, but it's artificial insemination, right? So they're two very different. But these women, something has been done to their bodies without their permission, both in God's name, on God's crusade. Okay, so yeah, so that's what I think. I'd love to know what you think. I probably sounding really harsh. Like I say, it is a good film. I think you just have to, for me, decouple it from The Omen, and you can enjoy the film. If you try and watch it as a prequel, it just puts too many plot holes in The Omen and the subsequent films. Both worth a watch. I definitely go say check them out on streaming. I think they're both still on at the cinema now. If you get a chance, I'd always say go see something at the pictures generally. Yeah. Oh, the one thing I didn't mention is like The Omen. Obviously they do use some of Jerry Goldsmith's music, and it's very atmospheric from that sense. I mean, some of the incidental music or the like sound effects actually hurt your ears. It was like, whoa, what's going on there? But it does give that very sort of creepy vibe. So I think it definitely does that better as well, the sort of music. But not enough tension in the first Omen. That is my biggest complaint. No big reveal at the end. It's really obvious where everything is going. Should have been a standalone film. Immaculate, again, slow burn, great performances, interesting ending. Both films will challenge you. There's a lot of female kind of body horror, pregnancy, blood, the JJs, as you'd expect, women in stirrups. Not comfortable watches, but if you like horror films, I do say go watch these. They're both worth a watch. Love to know your thoughts. Do you think I'm just being too nitpicky and get over it, Andrea? The Omen's 50 years old, let them reboot it. Or do you agree with me? Do you think, like, if you respect something, respect it? Or should the studios just have enough balls for people to be able to make original stuff? If this first Omen was an original film, I'd be much more on it. And yeah, and potentially with the sequel of Damien's sister, that could go either way. Cool. So I will hopefully be back this weekend. I have no idea what I'm going to be talking about yet. There's lots of things for me to watch. As you can see, I've been tied up with going to the cinema a lot. But I think there's some good stuff coming up soon on Netflix, etc. I've got Parasite the Grey to watch, K-drama. Very excited about that. That's one I mentioned before about like parasitic aliens coming and taking over the human race. Very exciting. I finally got to see American Fiction, so I'd love to talk about that. I'm hopefully going to be seeing Anatomy of a Fall as well. That's now on Prime, if anybody has Prime membership. So, anything else? One thing I haven't had a chance to talk about yet, House of the Dragon 2 trailers have dropped. I really want to talk about those. Cannot wait for season 2 of House of the Dragon. Very, very excited. Oh, and talking of harrowing, quiet on the set. Oosh. But we'll get into that on Sunday lunch on Sunday. So have a great week. Remember to like, share, and subscribe. Leave me some comments. Leave me some thoughts. What do you think about these films? Is this your jam, or are you just like, why? Have a great week, and I'll see you soon.